Welcome to the tnAchieves Virtual Community Service webinar. These webinars are designed to provide you, Tennessee Promise students, with an opportunity to learn more about college success tips, careers in your potential field of study, and other topics we think you will find interesting while you are navigating your educational journey. These webinars will also help you complete your community service requirement while it may be difficult for you to do so at this time. A few housekeeping details before we get started. By logging in as a tnAchieves student, we are able to track your attendance and how long you remain actively engaged during the webinar. Once you complete the webinar, you will automatically be given credit for 1 hour of community service. We will track how long you watch, and if you do not watch the webinar in its entirety, you will not receive credit. You do not need to complete the community service form for these webinars. tnAchieves will log your hours for you. tnAchieves staff and partners across the state are providing important insight and information we think you will find entertaining and informative. We hope you enjoy this new series of webinars. Welcome to the tnAchieves Virtual Community Service webinar. Today we have three of my coworkers here at tnAchieves to talk to you a little bit about where they are in their careers, advice as they began their careers, what they do today. And I think it's going to be really interesting because we intentionally picked three people in our organization that are at very different points in their career. So all of the perspectives should be a little bit different. I'm Graham Thomas, one of our deputy directors at tnAchieves. Glad that you're joining us today. And with us today, though, we have Chrissy D'Alejandro, who is our executive director at tnAchieves, Amanda Schneider, who is our senior director of communication, and Taylor Childers, who is one of our complete coaches. So I want to thank Chrissy, Amanda, and Taylor. Thank you guys for being here. And Chrissy, why don't we start with you? We'll have everyone kind of introduce themselves. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? Where did you go to college? What degree or degrees have you earned? What year did you graduate? What do you do at tnAchieves? And maybe any previous jobs, just a little background on yourself and your professional career.
Thanks, Graham. I assume the year I graduated should be the indicator of the fact that I was asked to be the old lady. That's a direct quote from an email that I received from Graham in the webinar, but happy to serve in that capacity. So I grew up in McMinnville, Tennessee, McMinnville, if you're a local, small, rural community outside of Nashville. I attended Warren County High School, go Pioneers, graduated from high school in 1997, which I believe is many years now before our current cohort of Tennessee Promise students were born. So exciting to watch those numbers continue to tick up. But graduated from Warren County High School, first in my family to attend college. I applied for one college, Sewanee, the University of the South. It's a small liberal arts school in Tennessee. I visited there for a math competition my junior year of high school and just fell madly in love with it and knew that it was the right fit for me. I spent 4 years there as a political science major, graduated, attempted a stint into the workforce, but knew really that I wasn't finished with school yet. So quickly returned to the University of Tennessee, where I pursued my doctorate in political science. And then from there, started my career in the Knox County Mayor's office. So I've had, 12 years now with tnAchieves, then tnAchieves. And prior to that, really serving in the mayor's office was my first big girl job, if you will.
Great, thanks, Chrissy. Amanda, what about you?
Hi, well, I'm super glad to be here today. Excited for everybody that is listening. My name is Amanda Schneider, and I grew up in Kingston, Tennessee. I am a 2007 graduate of Roane County High School that is located in Kingston. And I'm a first generation college student. So I also was the first in my family to go to school. And I actually started at Roane State in Harriman, went there for 2 years, and then transferred to East Tennessee State University, where I majored in public relations with a focus in speech communication. And then after I graduated, I actually decided to move back to Knoxville and began with tnAchieves at that point. And it's my first job out of college, and I've been here ever since 2012.
Great, thanks so much, Amanda. And Taylor, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name's Taylor Childress. I'm from South Knoxville, just on the south side of the Henley Street Bridge. I went to Southdale High School, in which I graduated in 2012. Chrissy actually ran my Tennessee Promise meeting back then. I can remember how attentive I was during that meeting, but thankfully, thanks to this program, I had the opportunity to go to Walter State Community College for 2 years. I finished up there in 2014, transferred to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, where I studied communication, and I graduated there in 2016. Currently, I'm a Knox Promise Complete Coach, where I get to work with a lot of amazing students in the Knoxville area. As far as jobs, this was not my first job out of college. I've done a little bit of everything, I feel like. I worked at Chick-fil-A for a little while. I worked for the Knox County Clerk's Office, and more recently, before this job, I was making kidney dialysis. So I've done a little bit of everything in my short work experience.
Great, sir. Thanks for sharing. I think one of my favorite, well, I think I have three favorite things about this webinar just in listening to everyone's introductions today. I think we have three first-generation college students, which I know I want to talk about a little bit more later. Also, three Tennesseans that graduated from public high schools in Tennessee, went to college in Tennessee, and two of you started at community college and transferred to a four-year university. All things we're definitely going to talk about later, and things I think are really exciting and are very much on point with our students that are listening today. So Taylor, I'm going to start with you as our most recent college graduate. Talk to us a little bit about what it was like for you navigating the job market once you graduated.
For me personally, it taught me a lot of patience. I was a first generation college student. My parents always said, go to college and jobs will be lining up for you as soon as you finish. Well, that wasn't necessarily the case for me. So I applied for a lot of jobs, but the reason for that is I was unsure as to what field I really wanted to pursue. Communication, you can go in a lot of different directions with that. So whenever I started navigating the job market, I always thought back to my college experience, how much I love that atmosphere of being on a college campus. And finally, I settled on, I want to work with college students in some capacity. So once you narrow down what you're actually wanting to do within what you studied, it makes it a lot easier as far as navigating that job search and going to those interviews and being more prepared because you're more passionate about the work that you're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of your major. Taylor and I share a college degree. So I do think there are a lot of opportunities with that communication degree. Amanda, tell us a little bit about yourself. When you were looking for your job, what was similar in your experience to Taylor? What was different? What's maybe changed over time?
Well, so similar to Taylor, whenever I graduated, I expected to go into a wide variety of opportunity whenever it came to a job. I graduated in 2012 from East Tennessee State University, about 4 years after the recession. So the job market was still a little bit grim at that point. And as I said, I went to school at East Tennessee State University, and that's in Johnson City, Tennessee. And my plan was to stay in Johnson City. But whenever I was looking for a job, I knew that I wanted to do something that was going to be fulfilling. It was going to be something that I fully believed in. And it also was going to be something that I had a passion for. I did not find that in Johnson City. So I looked for about 3 or 4 months and decided that maybe my original plan is not what's going to happen. Maybe that's not in the cards for me. So I decided to move back to my hometown in Kingston and continue the job search in the Knoxville area. Thankfully, whenever I moved back, about a month after I moved back, that's whenever I interviewed with tnAchieves, and that's when I immediately fell in love with tnAchieves, the mission behind tnAchieves, and what tnAchieves stood for, that it was working with college students, primarily first generation college students. And thankfully, tnAchieves led me back and decided to have me on the team, and that's where I've been since 2012. But the job search process is something that can be overwhelming. It can be intimidating. And it's something that just requires a lot of patience. And so that, if I could go back to 2012 and tell myself then, whenever I was looking for a job, to have patience, that would be my best advice whenever it comes to entering into the job market, is fully believe in yourself, know what you want, what you like, what you feel like that you would be good and thrive at, and just give yourself patience and grace.
I like what both of you so far have said about being patient, and I think also about maybe what you thought was your first option may not be where you land, and finding what it is that you love to do. Chrissy, what about you? What was your experience like?
So I was reflecting, listening to Taylor and Amanda about my sort of work trajectory, and I can't remember really a time when I could work that I wasn't working. I started off, all of you know this, but I did start off working in the baseball concessions in my small hometown before I could even drive. I could walk there. I made snow cones. And it was a very non-glamorous job, but I was an only child and came from an economically disadvantaged household. We were rich in many ways, just not in the form of funds coming into our home. And I liked clothes, and I wanted to buy a car at some point for myself. And so work ethic started for me really early. And I think it's bled into my career that even though I've now held the title of executive director of Tennessee Achieves for the last 12 years, that no task is beneath me, and I would never ask anyone at Tennessee Achieves to do something that I would not be doing myself. And I think that is something that has carried over into everyone who's ever worked at Tennessee Achieves and is currently part of our culture. But I remember graduating from Swanee and quite frankly thinking that I brought a skill set to the table that I did not quite have yet. I think as a first generation student, I had sort of a bloviated sense of self. Like I had earned the degree. I had done something that no one in my family had done before. Like, hey, pay attention to me. I'm ready to be some type of executive. And I quickly learned that was not the case, and spent many years in graduate school really searching for what I wanted to do, working, interning for free. I landed in the Knox County Mayor's office because I wanted to learn and absorb and listen, all of which were incredibly important skills that I brought into the position that I was later offered as deputy chief of staff. Being the youngest in the office was incredibly eye-opening to me because while maybe I had several degrees under my belt, I had no experience in the professional workspace. And so watching, observing, listening, all really important. I will also say now, after 12 years of interviews, because we're always, I feel like, trying to grow and expand the work we're doing at Tennessee Achieves, the importance of really knowing the organization prior to an interview. So when you do walk into an interview, being prepared to ask questions of the interviewers, really smart questions. I think that's always a defining moment for us when we're interviewing people, but also being really grounded in why you're there. Even if you're not exactly sure what the organization does, making sure to do that homework going in will set you apart from your peers.
Chris, I want to follow up with a couple of things you just said. You talked a little bit about servant leadership, and then you also talked about in your first job, maybe learning some of those things that you didn't learn in college. And what I mean by that is you didn't learn it in a book, you didn't learn it sitting in a classroom. In one of the other webinars that we've recorded, the In-Demand Careers, Dan Caldwell at Nissan talks a lot about the most important thing when you start a new job or when you start your career is learning how to work in a team, how to be collaborative. He said the number one thing you're going to do in a job is problem solve. And those aren't things you're necessarily going to read in a textbook sitting in a classroom. Why do you think that's so important? And for students that are in college today, how do you get those skills that maybe don't take place in an academic setting?
I think problem solving comes with being flexible and adaptable and really knowing what you're doing. You know this, Graham. We always say at Tennessee Achieves, it takes a full year to really understand the work. And we give everyone that grace coming in, but we do need critical thinkers at Tennessee Achieves, people that are thinking about patterns and thinking about how to overcome challenges for individual students. We're in the business of humans. So for us, it's about how do we take this one human, apply it to the 60,000 that come to our program every year so that we can be better and smarter and faster and more efficient and effective than we were the year before? And so I think a lot of that comes with experience. So going in, finding an internship, getting your hands dirty, asking lots of questions. I mean, one thing that I've always felt like it was a strength that I had, and I don't have many, but one certainly, is my ability to be incredibly curious and ask questions. And I think that's how you develop those problem solving skills. Why are you doing it this way? Why are you approaching this challenge through this lens? And so that asking questions, being inquisitive, and then, oftentimes I think, especially in the beginning, being willing to work more than that 40-hour work week. I mean, I remember very early in my career, Mike Ragsdale asked me to run his reelection campaign, and I had zero experience. So I spent literally my nights doing research and asking questions and being in a vulnerable place of saying, I don't know, but I'm a quick learner, I'm a quick study. So let me dig into this work. All of which I think comes with companies and organizations. When you are hiring, they're looking for the right fit. And if you bring those soft skills to the table, they can typically teach you what you need to know specifically to get your job done.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Taylor, talk a little bit about that. You're the newest to the workforce. I think one of the things that's been the most impressive about your tenure at Tennessee Achieves so far is that you are a really good team player. You seem to jump in and help the other coaches, help the other Knox Promise staff. Is that something you were just naturally inclined to do, or is it something you learned in your short career so far? Why have you picked up on that so quickly? Why do you think it's so important?
I think it's important because everybody at Tennessee Achieves has their strengths. And I think my strength is just being a good support player for the team. I get great joy watching the success of my peers. And I don't know, I've always been I guess, kind of fly under the radar type of guy. I just want to help the team succeed. And I think going into an organization, it's important to understand that team dynamic as well. Every organization is going to be different. Tennessee Achieves, we are very team focused, and it's very important that you assimilate to the team and, learn from each other. I ask a million questions a day. Chrissy was talking about it. It's very important to ask questions, understand what's going on, understand that scope. And I'm within my first year at Tennessee Achieves. So again, I'm trying to learn everything and absorb everything and be that good team player. That way, whenever it comes around next year, maybe people can come to me and ask those questions.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, Taylor. Amanda, Chrissy was talking a little bit earlier about kind of the hiring process and when we're interviewing candidates. I know you've sat in on several interviews for our new staff members at Tennessee Achieves. What are you looking for when you're talking to people that are interested in working here when we need to fill a position? And what do you wish you knew now that maybe you didn't know when you were interviewing for jobs?
So I love that Chrissy pointed out that asking questions is something that any interviewer is going to find impressive, because if you come into a job interview and you have questions for the interviewer, it will show that you are fully there and that you are showing up. So I think that that's, first of all, the most important thing is to show up. I always find it impressive whenever an interviewee comes in and they know maybe not everything about the organization, because as Taylor alluded to, a full year into Tennessee Achieves, and Chrissy had mentioned it too, in regards to learning. But if an interviewee comes in and they know about the organization, they know the high level, what Tennessee Achieves is, that's something that I've always found impressive. So whenever somebody does their research and they do show up to the interview, also, I do think that first impressions mean a lot. So dressing appropriately, having professionalism in your interview is extremely important as well. And I also think that being your true self, and also going in knowing that it is about fit, just as much as it could be about experience. So I think that anybody that is going into an interview should know what they want, what does interest them, and just make sure that they are showing up to the interview. And that is something that I wish that whenever I was going into different job interviews, that I knew that I needed to make sure that I came in as prepared as possible. I think that being prepared will help anybody that is going for a job interview be more calm, they will feel more comfortable, and they will be more themselves.
I'll never forget your interview at Tennessee Achieves. It's still one of my favorite days at the organization when you walked in, and Jackie and I were your initial interview, and just immediately thinking that you were the right person for the job. So the advice that Amanda has for a job, take good notes. And I think one of the things that came across with you, Amanda, was just how authentic you were, how you were your authentic, true self. And I think that always plays really well, as opposed to trying to maybe put on a front or be someone that you're not. Chrissy, anything you want to add? Interview
Yeah, I was
advice?
about to, no, absolutely. I was about to say, I think one of the things specific to Amanda and Taylor is that they're oozing with humility. And for me, that is an incredibly important attribute to bring to an interview. And I understand that in interviews, you need to be confident, but there is a fine line between confidence and arrogance. And so, are you here, especially in the nonprofit space, are you here to serve? Can you put students first? Can you be mission driven? Both Amanda and Taylor came in and were speaking from a place of confidence about their skill set, but also very much rooted in humility. And so I love that you said Amanda was her authentic self. I think that also applies to Taylor, to be willing to say, I was a first generation student. I graduated from South Doyle. I went to a community college. All these things that Amanda and Taylor are willing to share about themselves, I think it's so important for our students to understand that oftentimes adversity in an interview, especially if you graduated from college and you're starting your career in the workforce, understanding that that adversity is a badge of honor, and being able to use it in a way that shows that you maybe come from a more humble background, or maybe you don't come from a more humble background, but you're here for the right reasons and you want to be an asset to the organization. And you're coming from a place of, maybe I don't know everything, but I'm here to learn. I think all those are really important mindsets when you interview or as you're starting your first job.
Yeah, Taylor, as our most recent staff member that has gone through the interview process, and it wasn't all that long ago for you. Anything you look back on and that you've maybe taken away in that time, or things you wish that you knew then that you didn't know?
Well, I always, as Amanda and Chrissy were both speaking about, you have to be prepared going into an interview. I try to always be respectful of everybody's time. So if I'm going in there not knowing anything about Tennessee Achieves, I'm really just wasting their time and my time. So it's important to do that homework going in. And like Chrissy said, just remain humble. Be thankful for every opportunity that you get to interview with somebody. It goes back to fit. Amanda was talking about that. If it doesn't work out initially that time, it doesn't mean your paths won't cross down the road. So it's always important to be professional and courteous with everybody and their time.
That's really good advice. All right, we've talked a little bit about your college experiences. We've talked a little bit about the interviewing, onboarding process. Let's talk a little bit more now about your actual jobs. And Taylor, I'm going to start out with you. You're working directly with both our high school and college students, hundreds or thousands of them every single day. I guess let's first talk a little bit about, do you think being a Tennessee Promise student, being that first generation college student, how does that shape your work, the way that you approach your work? And then what are you hearing from students as you're starting to hear from students that are graduating in a couple of months? What are their concerns or worries, or what are they thinking about as they're entering the job market, and what advice do you have for them?
Yeah. So as some advice for students and going through this working with all these students, I think I can relate well with the students, specifically in working with the Knox Promise program, because these are people that are in my community. I understand the struggles of our community. They're not my neighbors. So I've been through those struggles myself. And I always tell students during the team meeting season, if you ever think of a reason to drop out, I want you to call me first, because I promise I thought of it at some point myself. As you're going through the college process, you have obstacles coming up. You never know what's going to go on with your family, work, school. It's a giant juggling act. It's where time management really comes in. So going through all of that myself, I think I can relate well with my students. I try to make them feel comfortable with talking to me about those struggles, because I share my struggles myself. I just want them to know that they're not the only ones in this. That's why it's so awesome that tnAchieves has built this support system for our students. But as far as transitioning from graduation into the job market, what I always tell my students is it's very important to be networking with people in your field, or not even necessarily in your field, just be meeting people. And internships are a great opportunity to go ahead and get your foot in the door and get some of that experience that employers are looking for. A lot of times students will graduate and be like, how do I get experience? Well, internships are a great way to do that. You get to know people. A lot of times employers want to hire somebody they know. So if you're already in the door in an internship, learning as much as you can, that's going to help your chances of getting that job once you graduate. And I think it's important, even when you do land that job, never stop learning. As you're going through the job hiring process, take notes, make note of everything that's going on. Whenever you get in or you're doing an internship, never stop learning. Always be willing to learn new things and take feedback and grow from that feedback as well. But that's what I tell my students is get out there, network, meet people, and try to get an internship before you finish up class.
Yeah, I think that networking piece is so important. Amanda, I'm going to ask you kind of the same first question. tnAchieves wasn't around when you graduated from high school, but kind of being on a similar trajectory as a lot of our tnAchieves students, first year in family to go to college, community college, transfer to a 4-year university. How does that experience shape the way that you approach your job here at tnAchieves? And then just to kind of fill everyone in a little bit more about your job, you're working directly with high school counselors and college administrators every day. What resources do they have for students to help them prepare for the workforce? And what can students be doing where they are today to be better prepared to enter the workforce?
Amanda, make sure you talk about the importance of having good writing skills, which I think is sort of a lost art.
Yes.
You definitely bring that to the table.
So when I was graduating from high school, honestly, I knew that I wanted to go to college, but I just did not really know the best way to go about getting to college. I did rely heavily on my school counselor. So I do think that school counselors truly are game changers for students, and that students should get to know their counselors because they can be such a great resource. So counselors, they provide the real life exposure to students. And they also do like the references and the referral letters. So they can do the resumes and the letters of recommendations for students as well. They just are such a great support system. And like whenever I
Looks like we may be having a few audio issues with Amanda, so we'll come back to Amanda here in just a second. Chrissy, I'm going to go over to you for just a moment. So you also were a first generation college student, and if you haven't listened to our podcast where Chrissy is interviewed, you can learn a lot more about her story there. But Chrissy, you talk a little bit about how when you were going to college, being a first generation college, you didn't really want people to know, and now you kind of wear it as a badge of honor. So talk to us a little bit about how being the first in your family to go to college shapes the way you approach your work at tnAchieves. But also talk a little bit more specifically about your job. You are meeting with large employers all the time. What are you hearing from them that they're looking for from students when they graduate?
I think it shapes, that's a good question, Graham. I think it shapes the approach that we take at Tennessee Achieves specifically. We put students first always. We think about what's in the student's best interest. I mean, we do have deadlines and we stick to those deadlines. But I also think it's a really great lesson for students because as you transition from high school to college, it's a heightened sense of responsibility for college students. And you don't have that constant reassurance from your counselor or your teachers that there will be, in fact, a deadline pushed back on assignments or that you can get a fifth chance. For many college students, it is very eye-opening, and Tennessee Achieves really wants to emulate that with the deadlines of the Tennessee Promise program. I mean, we do remind them sometimes, 30 plus times, but I think it's really important for students to understand that Tennessee Achieves is here to be a support system. And much of that comes from my background. I think about all the mistakes that I made and the insecurities I had as a first-time college goer and how I just sort of was a complete nightmare the first semester of college. But I decided to dig in and I decided to have fire in my belly. And so at Tennessee Achieves, in many ways, we're providing that support and encouragement through our volunteer mentor program and our coaching model to really help students find that same fire in their belly. Talking to large employers, what they talk about with me are fit. Fit is so important. And I really think returning to this idea of, do you have a work ethic? Can you show up on time? Can you work what needs to be worked without complaining? Can you approach the work with a positive attitude? Can you be solutions oriented in your work? I think all those skill sets we need students to bring to the table, or at least be willing to dig in and to learn very quickly. I don't know that you can teach positivity necessarily. I think the world is in a time right now where we need positive thoughts more than ever. And so I want to surround myself with positive humans, solutions-oriented humans, people who like to think disruptively. I don't know that every organization wants disruptive thinkers, but I certainly do. I also think it's incredibly important, which we haven't talked about, and Amanda is the ultimate at this, but can you manage your time and prioritize? What's the most important task? And can I complete something in a timely fashion and have it be nearly perfect? Graham, you read this book. You remember in the Bob Iger book, one of the lessons that I took away is that we'll never be perfect, but that we need to continue to strive for perfection. And so that means constantly learning yourself and honing new skills and digging in where you have weaknesses. And I wish I would have started that when I was 20 years old, as opposed to being 40 now and really thinking about what does professional development look like for me and what Enneagram number am I and how can I dig in on those places where I know that I'm not bringing my best self to the team.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite parts in the book, and one of the things we've adopted here at Tennessee Achieves, is that idea of taking calculated risk and then learning from your failures. I mean, I think it's okay sometimes to try something that doesn't work because you're going to learn a lot from that. Now, if you keep trying the same thing over and over and you're having the same result, it's the definition of insanity, right? But taking those calculated risk, trying different programs, and it's where our Bridge program came from. It's where the Summer Institute came from. I mean, a lot of the things that we do today are small ideas that have turned out to be really successful. And I think it's one of my favorite parts about working here.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that we do really well, I think at Tennessee Achieves, and that I've seen others do really well across the state, is that especially when you're new to the workforce, asking those humans like Taylor, and he certainly has done this, to jump in with both feet. This may not be the thing that you want to do forever, but while you're here, we need you to be solidly planted and bought into the work that we're doing so that you can then execute it well. You're representing our brand, a brand that we've spent the last 12 years building. And I can't imagine any employer in Tennessee or even outside of Tennessee feeling differently about that level of buy-in, even if it's not where you want to be forever. When you're there in the moment, you need to be all in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really good advice. Let's talk a little bit about for students that are maybe graduating in a couple months. We're kind of in uncertain times. Amanda talked a little bit about graduating when the economy wasn't great. I graduated in 2008 when the economy was really quite poor. So maybe a two-part question. What does it look like for students looking for jobs in the coming months in these kind of uncertain times? But let's scope out of just where we are today. What do you think are some advantages and disadvantages for students that are graduating in the next few years that they have today, advantages, disadvantages today that maybe weren't around when you were looking for a job? Chrissy, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I think students have access to a plethora of opportunities that I certainly did not know when I graduated from Sewanee specifically. The internet was certainly a thing then. I'm not that old, but it was really sort of just starting. And I remember really leveraging in the beginning the career services office at Sewanee to try to find my first job. Again, being a first generation student, and Taylor alluded to this, the importance of networking. And I had certainly networked, is that a word? Anyway, move with me. I had done everything I could possibly do at Sewanee. When I decided I was all in, I was really all in and really tried to find leadership opportunities. I ran new student orientation, for example, and I did work at the church. I immerse myself in all sorts of ways at Sewanee. And I think that taught me the importance of connection. But what I realized, because Sewanee is this very small liberal arts school in the mountain, that I hadn't really spread my wings far and wide at that point. And so I think about the advantages that students have, not only through their career services, but reaching out to say, and I can't imagine many organizations that would say no to this. Like, I'm really interested in fill in the blank. May I come for a day in job shadow? Or I'm really interested, do you have any unpaid internships? I mean, when I first graduated from Sewanee, I took a job that I didn't love and didn't stay there more than a few months, but realized I wanted to be in the political science field. So I worked during the day in an unpaid internship at Senator Frist's office in Nashville, and then spent my evenings working retail so I could pay my rent. And so I think understanding that the networking piece and Senator Frist's internship led to other opportunities. So getting to know people, I think, is an advantage that we have now because of the internet and how you can do all this virtually that I did not have at the time.
Yeah, Amanda, what about you? What do you think are some advantages, disadvantages for students navigating the job market in the next couple of years?
So one thing that Chrissy said was about career services, and I apologize for my technical difficulties a couple of minutes ago, but I do think that any student that is currently enrolled in college definitely needs to pursue their career services department. And I often tell students whenever I talk to them as they are entering into post-secondary, become best friends with your college admissions and financial aid office, as well as your college academic advisor and the career services. Your academic advisor can point you down the right direction to ensure that you're on the right track to graduating with the major that you intend to major in once you do fully enroll at your college. And then career services will be there for you whenever you are ready to enter into the workforce. I think that the students that are about to graduate here in this year, next year, the next couple of years have a great advantage because there are a lot of opportunities out there for students to learn. I think that pursuing internships, making sure that they are getting their foot in the door, whether that is with an organization or a business or just simply volunteering for a local nonprofit or for a community event. I think that establishing yourself while you are in college will help a student. It helps to build a resume. It helps to also network. We've talked a lot about networking during this webinar. And so I think that that is extremely important. So I think that the advantage is that there is just a lot of opportunity that is available to the students that are about to graduate. But I do think that it is going to take the student to have the fire in their belly to really pursue that opportunity. So making sure that they are getting out there. I always encourage students to be active on their college campus, join an organization, make sure that you are creating your network on campus, because that can get you off campus as well. So I definitely do encourage students to really, again, have that fire in their belly, because that will be to their advantage.
Graham, I think about all the mentors that you and Ben and Tyler spend your days recruiting and that step up and give their time to students, and what an amazing resource that is for our students. And so it's more important than ever for students to really take advantage of that relationship. I think high school students sort of forget that in maybe 2 to 3 years, you're going to be starting your career. And oh, by the way, my mentor is the president of the University of Tennessee, or my mentor is the president of the University of Tennessee at Martin, or my mentor is a CFO or CEO or nonprofit director. And thinking about, even if that's not the field that you want to go into, they have networks far and wide. And if you build that relationship, being responsive and being kind, and show that you really are interested, the mentor will be there to support you on the other side.
Yeah, I think that's
love
really
that
good advice.
Yeah, that is, when it comes to mentoring, like Chrissy said, whenever I was going into trying to choose the college, my school counselor was my mentor. But once I got to my post-secondary institution at Roane State, I had a mentor at Roane State. And so one great thing about Tennessee Achieves is that every student is paired to work, every Tennessee Promise student is paired to work with the Tennessee Achieves mentor. So I just want to also just reiterate what Chrissy said. Using your mentor, you will find that your mentor can be, they're on your team, and that they will be there for you until the very end. So you have your Tennessee Promise mentor, but then also whenever you're at your post-secondary institution or college, you can also find a mentor there as well. But using that Tennessee Promise mentor is another great advantage that the students have today.
And I think Taylor will probably be writing job recommendations in the very near future for the students that he's been coaching, which, I mean, again, building that support system so incredibly important.
Yeah, Taylor, talk to us a little bit about what you think the workforce looks like for these students. You've touched on it a little bit, but what about you? Do you have any mentors? Did you have any mentors in your life as you were graduating, looking for a job?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had my Tennessee Achieves mentor, which was very important for me taking that first step to even getting to college and changing that family dynamic. So thank you to my Tennessee Achieves mentor. Students, take advantage of all of their knowledge, learn as much as you can from them, and build a lasting relationship with them, because it will really benefit you. And again, they've got a lot more life experience than you, so take advantage of that information. But whenever it came to navigating the job force, whenever I graduated, I had a few acquaintances in the Knox County government, which really served me well as far as, trying to get a job right out of school. I started with the Knox County Clerk's Office right out of school, so that was very helpful to have that network there. You just start building on that network once you get in somewhere. Meet as many people as you can. And get to know what they do. Always be learn from other people, even if it's not necessarily a field that you're interested in, or maybe you don't know if you're interested in. Always be learning from those people and continue to build that network. I think that's the most important thing you can do, because I think the job market is pretty competitive, especially around the Knoxville area. So having any advantage you can, taking advantage of support on campus, taking advantage of support of your mentor, whether it's going to career services on campus, getting that additional help and maybe interviews or how to dress for an interview. All those little things will help you as you try to find a job once you graduate college.
Yeah, Taylor, I think that's really good advice. Networking is so important, and finding people in your field that can help you open those doors, I think, is something that I learned much later in college that I wish I had learned earlier. So we
Graham, I have
wrap
a
up
question
all.
for you. Graham,
I'm sorry.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
I think the latest statistic I heard is that by the time you turn 30, most people will be have at least 5 different jobs. And you've stayed with Tennessee Achieves now for over a decade. So talk to the listeners about why finding the right fit is so important and then seeing it through. Because when you started, Knox Achieves was not what it is now, tiny nonprofit, no website, as you always point out to me. And so I think walking through that finding the right fit and what keeps you in a job is incredibly important to this conversation as well.
Yeah, that's a great question, Chrissy. I was well on my way to becoming that statistic. When I graduated college, went and worked in Washington, D.C. for a member of Congress. And then after about a year of that, realized it wasn't really what I wanted to do. I went and worked for a mortgage company in Knoxville. And after about 6 months of that, realized that also was not what I wanted to do. Before I came to Knox Achieves at the time, Tennessee Achieves now. And I think I was dead set on politics coming out of college. I'd interned on a campaign, and I loved that work, being out in the community, meeting with voters and learning what was important to them. And then when I went to DC, I felt very disconnected from our constituents, the people that it felt like we were supposed to be serving. And then when I went to the mortgage company, I was working with a lot of customers that were finding themselves on hard times and trying to help them find ways to keep their homes, again, in a time where the economy was really, really bad. And while it was worthwhile, meaningful work, still sometimes felt very disconnected from them. And then when I got here, it was this perfect combination of getting to go out across our state and meet students and meet families and work with our employers and our stakeholders across the state that really care about the future of Tennessee. And so while the work is meaningful and I believe in the mission of Tennessee Achieves, I also found something that fits my skill set that I really, really love to do. And that is to be out in the field, building support around a cause, helping students. I'm not a good desk person. While I understand the importance of being at my desk for several hours every week to be prepared to go out and do that work, it took a little bit of bouncing around. But I think once I got here, I realized that we were in one county with 490 students the first year. Now we're in 90 counties, 63,000 students. The opportunity to build something was really exciting to me. I've never really seen myself as like an entrepreneur. I don't think I have the guts it takes to take that kind of a risk. But to come out and get to build something like this, like a social entrepreneurship in a way, was really exciting and fascinating to me. And then I think the reason I stay is the team, the 3 of you that are on here, the other 22 people that we work with every day. We found a team that believes in a mission, that works really hard to go out and help students across Tennessee. And while the mission is important, the team buying into that mission, I think is what keeps me here every day.
Good advice. I like
Turning the questions around on me there. I like that. All right,
I like
so we
curveballs.
finished. We got just a few minutes left here before we wrap up, and we finish all of these every webinar in this series with the same 3 questions. So, Chrissy, why don't you go first, and we'll take turns with who goes first. But Chrissy, you can go first on this one. What is one thing that you wish you knew when you were a student in college?
I think I wish I knew how to manage my time better. I was trying to work and also make school a priority. And I oftentimes had priorities that were not in line with studying. I was a good student and I tried really hard, but it tended to be this very stressful, procrastinating type experience. And when I look back now, I don't know how I survived all those like sleepless nights. And so I think what I wish I knew is how to better manage my time, I've always been a morning person. What I know about myself is I'm most productive in the morning. And so thinking about how I would have sketched my days out would probably be very different. And then I think also, and I think Amanda talked about this, the idea of patience. I wanted to be everything to everyone all the time, probably played into this sort of time management challenge that I was just referencing, but just to have patience and to give myself a little bit of grace.
Yeah, I think that's great. Amanda, what about you?
I think that I wish to ask more questions. I wish that I knew to do that more, to have more of a learning opportunity than what I was having in the classroom. So ask more questions, get myself just a little bit more involved, because that could open up more experience, and it can build the relationships that we've talked about that are so important. Also, I think that taking time to explore interests, which that also comes with getting more exposure to the campus, and really trying to find what works for you. Because I feel like that during my collegiate career, I would try a lot of things and that my friends were doing in regards to study habits, or anything with a class if we were doing study groups. So I think that I really wish that I knew how to, like Chrissy said, better prioritize my time, especially whenever it came around studying outside of the classroom. Because going to class is something that I did very well. I always went to all of my classes, as every student should, but it was after class and studying and trying to prepare that I wish that I would have been a little bit more focused on myself and understood what worked for me better instead of what worked for other people. So I think that asking the questions and then just take time to explore more about yourself.
I love that asking the questions part. I think it's something that a lot of students don't do. And it certainly is not a sign of weakness. It's how you learn. And Chrissy always has the saying about you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And there's no better way to learn it than asking questions. Taylor, what about you? What do you wish you knew while you were a student in college?
I wish I would have known how important it is to start building that professional network while you're in school. You're in school with all your peers, they're going to be joining the job field as well. You're starting your network right then and there. I wish I would have joined more clubs, met more people, more honor society opportunities. I wish I would have taken advantage of those and taken advantage of the job fairs on campus just to meet more people. I feel like I put myself at a pretty big disadvantage by not doing that. I was very dedicated in the classroom. I was working full time when I was going to school, but I didn't put in that extra effort to start building that network. And wiser people than me at the time told me, hey, this is important now. You should listen. I wish I would have listened then, as opposed to starting my network after I had graduated, which I think put me at a little bit of a disadvantage. So I would definitely recommend go ahead and start building that network, get to know people that you're going to school with as well.
Yeah, I think it's good advice. I feel the same way. I have been told for 4 years to network and didn't start doing it until probably my senior year. And it does kind of put you behind the 8 ball. Amanda, one piece of advice for students, what would you give them?
Ooh, get involved. I think because what we've talked about a lot is networking and really putting yourself out there on the campus, because it can be beneficial to you once you graduate, and it is beneficial. So my advice is get involved now, get involved your first semester, get involved the summer before at your college as well as in your community.
That's a great piece of advice. Taylor, what about you?
My advice to all students is appreciate the opportunity that you have to go to college. Not everybody has that opportunity in the world to pursue a post-secondary credential, so really appreciate that. Don't take it for granted. I know college can be overwhelming, but it provides the ability to grow in a lot of areas, not just in the classroom, but as a person. I feel like I grew more in those 4 years than I have in my entire life. So just really appreciate that opportunity and the life experience that goes along with it.
Yeah, that's really good advice too there. Chrissy?
Earn the degree. I mean, it's going to get hard, but it's been hard for everyone. No one breezed through college. Don't let them ever tell you that they did. It was the first semester. I've talked to everyone that I've ever known that has gone to college, and the first semester was a disaster for the most part. So that's true if you're first generation, non-first generation. If you escaped that, congratulations to you. But I'd say earn the degree, dig in, make sure that you are leaning into your support system when it gets hard and saying thank you to the support system when it's easier. But staying to the end will be incredibly important and a game changer as you enter the workforce.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I think there is this misconception that people just woke up successful today and that they didn't work hard to get where they are and that they didn't have some challenges along the way. And I think everyone that's been to college had to dig in at some point. Really good advice. All right, last question. Taylor, I'll let you kick us off here. If you could do anything in the world besides work at Tennessee Achieves, what would you do?
I always jokingly used to tell my mom, one day I'm going to go to school, because if you know me, I like to talk. I'm pretty sure everybody from South Knoxville likes to talk, but I always told mom in high school that I wanted to be the voice of the Vols one day. I wanted to call football and basketball games, but now I realize, as I'm getting older, maybe I don't have the vocal range to get as excited as old Bob Kessling does when the Vols score a touchdown. But realistically, I've always wanted to become a college professor. So hopefully I will make good on that goal on down the line. But I always thought it would be fun. I love working with students. So I love the job and the work that we're doing here at Tennessee Achieves. But maybe somewhere down the line, I'd like to, try teaching at some point.
You may have the voice to replace Bert one day doing the color for the basketball game.
Well, that's something.
Amanda, what about you? If you could do anything besides work at Tennessee Achieves, what would it be?
Gosh, that is so hard because all I've known is Tennessee Achieves, and that's how I foresee the future. So I am super passionate about accessing higher education, super passionate about helping people realize their potential, because I've had so many people throughout my life who have helped me to realize my potential. And a lot of those people are people that I work with every single day. So I'm always eternally grateful for the opportunities. But if I wasn't at Tennessee Achieves, in my personal life, I really find an interest in wellness and just being well. So I think that maybe I don't know what it would look like necessarily, but something with helping people try to be like the best version that they could be of themselves in regards to their health, maybe, or just being some sort of counselor for somebody, because I also love talking. I also love listening, and I also love problem solving. So there's just several different things, but I guess something that would allow me to still continue to help somebody.
That's great. Chrissy, finish this strong. If you could do anything besides be the executive director at Tennessee Achieves, what would it be?
To be the executive director of America Achieves, or the world achieves. The idea of leading a program that is helping every student across the country, across the world, reach their full potential with a post-secondary credential, at least the opportunity to pursue a post-secondary credential. So I think I was called to do this work. I feel as passionate about it today as I did when we started 12 years ago, probably more so. And so I continue to think just expanding our mission outside of the confines of my home state would be really amazing. I will say, prior to this job, I always wanted to be a speechwriter for the president, but then have met people who did that job, and it sounds incredibly daunting, but also just sort of chaotic, which I love. So I think maybe if I could run World Achieves and also do a side gig as the speechwriter for the president, that would be a pretty fulfilling life, and raise my 3 kids. So yeah, it would be fun. How about you, Graham? What's your dream job if you weren't at Tennessee Achieves?
I mean, I would love to be a professional golfer, but I just don't have that ability. So I think Tennessee Achieves is the career path for me for right now.
We're safe with you still being here, if that's the ultimate.
Traveling the world, playing the nicest golf courses in the world and getting paid to do it sounds like a dream, but I don't know that my 20 handicap is going to allow me to do that anytime soon.
This has been so fun. fun.
It has. I've
Good.
loved this.
Well, I want to thank Chrissy, Amanda, Taylor. Thank you guys for being here today and talking about this. Students that are tuning in to us today, I hope that you learned some different things. Again, my favorite thing about the Sonar, I think, is we've got 3 Tennesseans from public high schools that went to college in Tennessee, 2 of which took the transfer route. All 3 of you are the first in your family to go to college. So I know, having known you all now for Chrissy for over a decade, Amanda for 8 years, and Taylor for about a year now, I learned some things on this today. So thank you all for being here, students. I hope that you enjoyed this. And I hope that you'll join us for some more in our series on our virtual community service webinars at www.tnAchieves.org. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
Graham.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Taylor.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this installment of the Tennessee Achieves Virtual Community Service webinar. Your attendance will be automatically recorded and your 1 hour of community service is being credited to you. Please click Submit on this screen to ensure that your attendance is recorded for you. For this community service opportunity, you will not need to complete the community service form. We hope you found this opportunity to be engaging and informative. Please watch more of the series by visiting www.tnachieves.org. We hope you have a great day. Thank you.